My dear student in the first secondary stage, welcome at Integrated Science Program. My name is Mr. Hani Muhammad. I am a teacher of Integrated Science. This session is prepared by Mr. Hani Muhammad and revised by the science subject expert Mr. Amri Mali. And now let's continue our Integrated Science program with the first unit, Aquatic Ecosystem, Lesson 8, The Effects of Light and Solar Radiation on Aquatic Environment. I want all of you to look carefully to this picture. Imagine you are diving in the sea. You will observe that the intensity of the light decreases by the deeper you go into the water. Here, we might have many questions that come into your mind. The first question is, how does this affect the living organisms that live in the depth? Also, another question, how does light in different water layers affect photosynthesis process? Also, what is the role of solar radiation in maintaining the ecological balance in the oceans? So we have here in our lesson today three key questions we need to answer during our episode today. So let's go and let's start. First, we need to know the meaning or the concept of electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic spectrum is a wide range of electromagnetic waves that differ from each other in wavelength and frequency, such as gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet, visible light, infrared, microwaves, and finally radio wave. Let's say that again, the concept of electromagnetic spectrum, a wide range of electromagnetic waves that differ from each other in wavelength and frequency, such as gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet, visible light, infrared, microwaves, and radio wave. So this is the first. We need to know exactly the concept of electromagnetic spectrum. And now this graph represents the electromagnetic spectrum, which is start by the gamma rays, which has the highest frequency and the highest energy also, and then X-ray, then ultraviolet, and very small portion, which is the visible light, which is ranges from 400 nanometer wavelength to 700 nanometer wavelength. Next, we have the infrared and radio wave. So this graph represents the electromagnetic wave spectrum. Okay? And now, the most important thing we need to concentrate on in this graph, it is the visible light, which is the title of our lesson for today, and how the light impacts the aquatic environment in oceans or seas or also in the rivers. Okay, so let's go for the visible light. What is the visible light? The visible light represents a small part of electromagnetic spectrum. It consists of different wavelengths known as the spectrum colors, which are in order red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So the visible light, it is just very small part in the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, and the visible light, it is the key point and the key which we will study today, and we need to know how the visible light affects the aquatic environment. Okay, now the solar radiation through the water. Okay, solar radiation is the primary source of energy on Earth, and it is directly affects the different layers of the water. The solar radiation, really, it is the main source of the energy on the Earth. Why? Because all the plants on the Earth's surface, okay, or even the aquatic plants, depend on the solar radiation or the sunlight in photosynthesis process. So if the photosynthesis process is stopped or affected badly, that will affect all the life kind on the Earth surface. Okay, so the solar radiation is very important, whatever on the Earth surface or on the aquatic environments. Okay? When sunlight penetrates the surface of the water, a part of it is absorbed by the water and suspended material, also aquatic plants, while the other part is scattered as the light penetrates deeper. Okay? Also, let's talk about the penetration of the sunlight to the ocean's water and how the light affects the aquatic environment. So I want you to be very focused and concentrated. Our lesson is the effect of the light and the solar radiation on aquatic environment. So I want all of you to keep that in your mind always, okay? To be concentrated with me, okay? When the sun rays fall on the ocean waters, the surface of the water reflects a part of them back into the atmosphere. As you see in this picture, okay, the sun rays fall on the surface of the water, whatever oceans or the seas, and it will reflect back. Part of it will reflect back, and another part will penetrate through the water. Okay? Again, don't forget that when the sun rays fall on the ocean waters, the surface of the water reflects a part of them back into the atmosphere. Okay? That's clear. And now, my dear student, let's talk about what are the factors affecting the amount of light energy penetrate the water surface. Okay? Again, we need to concentrate. We will talk about the factors affecting the amount of light energy penetrate the water surface. Okay? The first factor, the angle at which the sun rays strike the water surface. How is that? The amount of light that penetrates the water surface increases by increasing the sunlight inclination angle. How? All of you look to this diagram, which represents the sunlight which falls on different areas of the Earth surface. Okay? Let's talk about the sun rays in the B area, okay, where the sun rays, it is perpendicular to the surface of the water and it is concentrated in a small area. So it has high intensity and the sunlight here can penetrate for a long distance. Why? Because it is perpendicular, so it's very concentrated in a small area. Okay, but if we go to the sun rays at the area A, okay, it is inclined with a small angle. So it is distributed over a large area, and that makes the sun rise. Okay, it is not concentrated, and it is intensity, it is less than the perpendicular one. So it cannot penetrate for a long distance inside the water of the seas or the ocean. So the angle at which the sun rays strike the water surface, it is very important factor in penetration of the sunlight to the ocean's water. Okay, I think it is very clear. I want you to concentrate and to know exactly what are the factors affecting the amount of light energy penetrate the water surface. The first factor is, yes, the angle at which the sun rays strike water surface. Okay? And now, my dear student, let's go for another factor. Yes, it is the depth. As water depth increases, the light intensity gradually decreases. Look to this picture, okay, which represents the sunlight which penetrate the surface of the water in the ocean or the seas. Okay, in the surface, the sunlight can penetrate and it is bright light. But when you go down deeper, okay, the intensity of the light decrease till it is approximately disappear in this area. So the depth affects the intensity of the light in the water. So as you go deeper in the ocean or the seas, the intensity of the light decrease. Okay, so if I ask you now, what is the second factor that affect the amount of light energy penetrate the water surface? Yes, you are right. It is the depth. And what is the relation between the depth and the intensity of the light? Yes, good. It is inversely relation. As you go deeper, the depth increase, so the intensity of the light will decrease. Okay? So we have two factors and you have to keep them in your mind. Okay? And now, my dear student, let's go for another point in our lesson, which is the photic zone in ocean's water. So here I want to ask a question. What is meant by the photic zone? It is a different areas in the oceans or different levels in the oceans, okay, where the light intensities are differ. Okay, again, so the photic zone, it means a different areas or different levels in the oceans where the intensity of the light are differs. Okay, so the different zone in the ocean is the first one, the sunlit or surface zone, which is contains a high amount of the light. It's a bright area. Okay, the second one, twilight or mid-depth zone, where it has a moderated amount of the light intensity. Okay, the third one, it is the dark or deep zone, where there is no any kind of the light in this area. It is just a dark in that area. Okay, and this diagram shows the different zones in the ocean, which is called by photic zone. Called by what? Yes, photic zone. Yes, the sunlit zone, the twilight zone, and the dark zone. And don't forget, for every zone, a special creatures that can adapt and live in this zone. Okay, and we're gonna to study that in the next part. Okay, look here. Marine organisms live in each of these zones according to their ability to adapt to the amount of the available light. I want all of you to concentrate and look carefully to this picture, which represent the three different zones, starting by the sunlight zone, okay, where it has high amount or a lot of the light, okay, it's a bright area where we can find different creatures like the aquatic plant and algae and different fish. And the second layer, which is twilight zone, where it has moderated amount of the light, so we can find a different kind of living organism like whales and like octopus, okay? Finally, the midnight or the dark area, we have a completely different creatures which can adapt with the dark conditions in this area. Okay, so the different zone in the oceans, for each zone, there is a kind of the living organism that can adapt with the conditions of the brightness of the light or the lack of the light or the darkness if it's in the deep oceans. Okay? Now, my dear student, we want to talk about the absorption of the solar radiation in water. How the absorption of the light in the water happen. Okay? First, water absorbs about all of the infrared energy from sunlight at depth of 10 centimeters from the surface. So the first 10 centimeter of the water surface, most of the infrared energy will be absorbed. Okay. Second, at a depth of 10 meters, water absorbs more than 50% of visible light energy. What else? Let's see. In the clear tropical waters, only about 1% of visible light, most of it in the blue range, reaches a depth of 100 meters. Okay, so this is how the absorption of the water, how the absorption of the solar radiation happen inside what? Inside the water. Okay, also the water absorbs the warm colors, such as red and orange, which have long wavelength, and scatter the cooler colors, which have short wavelengths like the blue and the violet colors. Okay? So now we need to know the effect of the solar radiation on aquatic environment. So this is what, yes, this is the second questions which we ask in the previous part of our lesson, in the first screen in our lesson. Okay, so what is the effect of the solar radiation on aquatic environments? Solar radiation is a vital factor in maintaining the ecological balance in aquatic environment. It not only affects photosynthesis, which is the basis of marine life, but it also directly impacts water temperature and distribution of marine organisms. So the solar radiation, it has very essential effects on the marine creatures or the aquatic environment. So the solar radiation is a vital factor in maintaining the ecological balance in aquatic environments. It's not only affects photosynthesis, which is the basis of marine life, but it also directly impacts water temperature and the distribution of marine organisms. Okay? Now, my dear student, let's read this big title. The role of solar radiation in the distribution of marine organisms. It is very, very important part in our lesson for today. Okay, because we want to know how the different intensities or the photic areas in the ocean control the type of creatures that can live and adapt with these conditions. Okay, so marine organisms are distributed unevenly in the water according to their needs for light and energy. So the needs of light and energy, it's control the kind of the living organism that can live in this area in the ocean. Okay? So autotrophic organisms. And don't forget what is meant by the autotrophic organism. I think I mentioned that before in the previous lessons. Okay, so autotrophic living organism, it is a living organism that depend on itself to make its own food. Like what? Like the green plants. The green plants make the photosynthesis process. Okay, so it is independent on any kind of the living organism to do the photosynthesis process. Just its need, yes, the carbon dioxide, okay, and sunlight, chlorophyll to make the photosynthesis process, okay? So the autotrophic organisms that rely on photosynthesis, such as aquatic plants, algae, and phytoplankton, are abundant in the surface layers of the water where sufficient solar radiation is available. So if you look, okay, if you look again here to the upper surface or the sunlight zone, we can find what? Yes, autotrophic living organisms, okay, such as what? Yes, such as plants and algae and phytoplankton. Why? Because they need to the light to make the photosynthesis process. Okay? But now, let's go for the second layer, which is twilight zone. Okay? It also contains a different kind of the living organism. But the first layer, which is sunlight zone, okay, we can find, yes, the autotrophic living organism. Okay? Also, coral reefs thrive in the warm, shallow waters near the equator where solar radiation is available year-round. So also the coral reefs, we can find it in the, yes, in the first layer or the sunlit zone. Why? Because it's need for the warm and also need for the sunlight. Also, the sun radiation stimulates the growth of the symbiotic algae that live inside the coral tissues and provide them with the food. So the solar radiation has a great role in the distribution of marine organisms inside what? Yes, inside the aquatic environment, whatever oceanic environment or seas or freshwater environment. Okay? Okay, my dear student, now let's go and we need to know the effect of the solar radiation on water temperature because the water temperature also can control the type or the kinds of the living creatures that can live in these areas. Okay? Solar radiation directly affects water temperature, which in turn influences the distribution of marine organisms. Okay, so the temperature can control the distribution of marine creatures in the different areas or different levels inside the ocean. Good. Also, the warm water resulting from solar radiation in tropical regions attracts certain types of fish and marine animals that require specific temperature to survive and reproduce. Okay, so the heat here or the temperature here control and attract different kinds of the living creatures. So the temperature here affect the distribution of the living creatures in the different areas inside the ocean. For example, the tropical fish such as tuna and barracuda live in warm waters, while other species such as codfish prefer the cooler water. Okay, so here the difference in the temperature control the type of the living organism that live in this area. The codfish, it's preferred to live in the cooler water, but barracuda and the tuna, they prefer to be in the, yes, in the tropical region where it is a little bit warm conditions. Okay, and now the effect of change in the intensity of the solar radiation. If the solar radiation intensity changes, how this will affect the aquatic environment? Changes in the intensity of the solar radiation due to the seasonal or climate change can lead to disruptions in the ecological balance. How that happen? Let's go for example. In polar regions where solar radiation is low or non-existent during winter, photosynthesis rate decrease significantly, which affected the availability of food for marine organisms. So, if you look to this picture, the intensity of the light is very low intensity. Okay, so that will affect the photosynthesis process for the marine plants. Okay, and that can affect what? The availability of food for marine organisms. Okay, so the change in the intensity of the solar radiation affect also the conditions or the ecosystem in this area. Okay, my dear student, let's go for the ocean current and the effect of the solar radiation in ocean currents. Look carefully and read with me. Solar radiation also contributes to the formation of ocean currents. These currents affect the distribution of marine life and make some areas rich in food resources. Look to this and let's follow the example. The Gulf Stream carries warm water. Okay, this is the Gulf Stream, which carries the warm water from where? Yes, from the equatorial region, okay, toward the North Atlantic Ocean, which led to moderate climate in regions like Western Europe and enhance marine life diversity there. Okay, so the effect of the solar radiation on the currents in the ocean current, okay, for example, the Gulf Stream, which transfer what? The warm water from the equatorial area to the, yes, Atlantic Ocean, okay, which lead to moderate climate in regions like Western Europe and enhance marine life diversity. Okay, and now, my dear student, let's go for test our information. We need to review and concentrate these questions. Okay, first question: as water depth increase, the intensity of light under the water surface blank, yes, gradually increase, gradually decrease, decreases then increases, increases then decreases. Yes, you are right. Gradually decreases. I mentioned before what is the relation between the depth and the intensity of the light? Yes, it is inversely. By increasing the depth, the intensity of the light will decrease. Okay, let's go for another question. Which of the following statements represent the correct order of the light zones in water according to their depth from top to bottom? Let's start. A. Twilight zone, dark zone, sunlit zone. Dark zone, sunlit zone, twilight zone. Sunlit zone, twilight zone, dark zone. Twilight zone, sunlit zone, dark zone. Yes, I think it is very, very easy questions because we talked about this before. So it will be, yes, we start by the sunlit zone, then twilight zone, finally the dark zone, and don't forget for every zone, a specific kind of the living organism can adapt and they can live in that zone. Next, the amount of light that penetrates the water surface in is greatest when the angle between the incident sun's rays and the water surface equals 0 degree, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees. Yes, it's very easy. It's 90 degrees because the sunlight will be more focused and more concentrated and with high intensity, so it can penetrate more and deep in what? In the water of oceans. Another question. Which of the following light colors is absorbed first after penetration the surface of a body of water? Red and blue, orange and blue, orange and red and yellow. That's right. Let's go for the answer. Orange and red, which you called by what? By warm colors or warm lights. Okay? Which of the following statement is correct? Water depth affects only the absorption of light. Water depth affects only the intensity of light. Water depth affects both the absorption and intensity of light. Water depth affects neither the absorption nor the intensity of the light. That's right. Okay, so water depth affects both absorption and intensity of the light. Another question, my dear student. Photosynthesis mainly occurs in the blank layers of bodies of water, surface, mid-depth, deep, abyssal floor. Yes, that's right. It is the surface because in the surface we can find available light, available sunlight, which is help in the photosynthesis process. Okay? In which of the following electromagnetic spectrum regions do the waves have the shortest wavelengths? Don't forget the electromagnetic spectrum. It is a wide range of electromagnetic waves. Okay? That starts by what? By gamma ray and end with the radio waves. Okay? So, in which of the following electromagnetic spectrum regions do the waves have the shortest wavelengths? Radio waves, visible light, X-rays, gamma rays. You are right. Yes, it is gamma rays, which has the shortest wavelengths and the highest energy and also the highest frequency. That's good. Another question. The violet color has blank among the colors of the spectrum, the highest frequency and the shortest wavelength, the highest frequency and the longest wavelength, the lowest frequency and the longest wavelength, the lowest frequency and the shortest wavelength. Try to think, it is not an easy question. Good. The highest frequency and the shortest wavelength. Don't forget that, please. Another question. The mean conditions for existence of plants in abundance in the aquatic environment is blank. Availability of fresh water, increases in salinity level, decreases in carbon dioxide gas level, the suitable amount of light for completing photosynthesis process. Yes, try to think, try to concentrate. So you are right. Yes, letter D, it is the right answer. The suitable amount of light for completing photosynthesis. Okay, let's go for another question. In the opposite figure represent three zones, X, Y, and Z. In the ocean water, which of these zones is the most suitable for existence of autotrophic algae in it? Don't forget, autotrophic algae, it means the algae make the photosynthesis process, and we need for photosynthesis process sunlight. So which one will be suitable for the autotrophic algae? That's right, excellent. It is zone X, okay, which is the first layer of the water surface where we can find available light for the photosynthesis process. Okay, another question. Which of the following fish can be found in the Atlantic Ocean at the equator? Okay, so codfish only, barracuda fish only, tuna and codfish, barracuda and tuna. Yes, you are right, barracuda and tuna, because they can live in the warm areas, especially in the equator. Okay, but codfish, it's preferred to be in a cold areas. Okay, another question. What is the main effect of the Gulf Stream on Western Europe climate? The first choice, reduces temperature, making the climate very cold. Reduces temperature, making the climate more moderate. Rises the temperature, making the climate very hot. Rises temperature, making the climate more moderated. Yes, don't forget the Gulf Stream, it is an hot stream. So it is rise the temperature to make the climate more moderated. Okay, so the right answer here will be D, rise temperatures, making the climate more moderate. Another question. Which two quantities of the following decrease in magnitude with increasing depth in Red Sea water in summer? First choice, water density and its pressure, water density and its temperature, water temperature and its pressure, water temperature and light intensity through it. Try to concentrate. It is a question need for more thinking, deep thinking. Yes, this is the right answer. Water temperature and light intensity through it. Okay? Another question. In a clear tropical water, only about blank of the energy of visible light incident on the surface reaches 100-meter depth and most of this light in the region of blank light. Good. 1% and blue. So in clear tropic water, only about 1% of the energy of visible light incident on the surface reaches 100-meter depth, and most of this light in the region of blue light. Okay? Another question. When solar radiation passes through the surface layer of ocean water, what will happen in that? Yes, let's start by the different choices. The longer wavelength of visible light are firstly absorbed. The shortest wavelength of visible light are firstly absorbed. All wavelengths of visible light are completely absorbed together. None of the wavelengths of visible light is absorbed. Yes, that's right. The longer wavelength of visible light are firstly absorbed. Okay, like the red and the orange. Okay. The opposite diagram shows four regions in the electromagnetic spectrum. Which of the following choices represent region A and B respectively? First one, X-rays gamma, infrarays radio waves, X-rays infrarays, infrared rays, and X-rays. Yes, that's right. Infrared will be region A, and X-ray will be region B. That's right. Another question. The sea appears blue. Among the reason of that is water doesn't absorb the water length of blue light. The water sea surface reflects the wavelength of blue light. The wavelength of blue light penetrates deeper into water compared to other colors. Water absorbs the wavelengths of blue light. That's very easy question. Yes, the wavelengths of blue light penetrate deeper into water compared to other colors. And now let's go for essay questions. Give reason for photosynthesis mainly occurs in the surface layers of the ocean water. That's very easy due to the availability of the sunlight. Good. Another question. Solar radiation is available factors in maintaining the ecological balance in the aquatic environment. Okay, let's go for the answer. Because it affects photosynthesis process. Moreover, it directly impacts water temperature and distribution of marine organisms. Another question. Algae and phytoplankton are abundant in the surface layer of bodies of water. That's clear for us. Yes, due to the sufficient solar radiation is available in the surface layer that helps in photosynthesis process and maintain the ecosystem balance. Coral reefs thrive in warm, shallow waters near the equator. Yes, because the solar radiation is available year-round. My dear student, this is the end of our lesson for today. I hope all of you understood well. See you next time and goodbye.